This isn't really a story, it's more of a series of observations, or I guess a critique of a work of art. The Clock by Christian Marclay. I don't know how many of you guys have seen or heard of. Pippin, of course, has, but some of you might not have. In any case, hopefully this will help you wrap your minds around it a little bit. There's no slowing it down and no turning back. The day is too far along to be dined. Though some will try, some always do. At 2 o'clock precisely, a man screams at a grandfather clock. That'll be enough of that, and smashes it to pieces. But the day continues. It always does. The Japanese, a pragmatic people, a realistic people, deal with the situation by having a meeting at a long white conference table. Faced with the same reality, we in the West tend to opt for a stiff drink instead. But people will insist upon shooting us sideways glances and saying things like, "It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon." And so we put down our glasses and sigh. The afternoon, free from the blur of hangover or the sludge of sleep, is when our shared predicament on this planet becomes clear. Coincidentally, the afternoon is also the time when many people will first go to see Christian Marclay's The Clock. Not too early, just after lunch. After all, it may be good, it may be bad. You don't want to lose a whole morning over it. But very soon, sooner than you could possibly have imagined, in fact at exactly 2:06, as Adam Sandler patronizes a Spanish girl, you realize that The Clock is neither bad nor good, but sublime. Not the greatest film you have ever seen, but you will need to come back in the morning, in the evening, and late at night, abandoning everything else, packing a sleeping bag, and decamping to the LA Modern Museum of Art until sunrise. Except, Christ, is that the time? Oh well, come back tomorrow. The things you notice on a second visit are quite small, but feel necessary for orientation, like drawing an X and Y axis before attempting to plot a great mass of information on a graph. I myself try to state the obvious, to get it clear in my own mind. The Clock is a 24-hour movie that tells the time. This is achieved by editing together clips of movies in which clocks appear. But the clock is so monumental in intention and design that even the simplest things you can say about it need qualification. There isn't, for example, a clock visible in every scene. Sometimes people will only mention the time, or even just speak of time, as a general concept. Mary Poppins does less than that. She glances at her wristwatch, the face of which we cannot see, then opens her umbrella and flies, to be replaced a moment later by a man also flying with an umbrella, who soon floats past the clock tower, thus revealing the time. There are many moments like this, and when you first notice them, their synchronicity and beauty are a little unnerving. They reveal a creative constraint even larger and more demanding than the one you had assumed. If the clock cares to match a flying umbrella with a flying umbrella, that must have aesthetic currents passing beneath its main flow, moving in a variety of directions, not simply clockwise. You sit in the dark, trying to figure out la règle du jeu. Clearly, there are two types of time, real and staged. There are a few ways to say that. Accidental clocks versus deliberate clocks. Time that has been caught on film versus time that has been manipulated by film, for film. It turns out that accidental clocks are more poignant than deliberate clocks. The actors in the street valiantly approximate reality, but the clock tower behind them has captured reality. A genuine moment in time now past forever, unrecoverable, yet reanimated by film. It really was 3:22. 3:22 would have happened whether it was filmed or not, and consequently this moment feels unvarnished, unmanipulated, true even. By contrast, stage time obeys certain conventions. Afternoon sex is the sexiest, probably because it often involves prostitutes. Between 4 and 5 o'clock, transport is significant. Trains, cars, and airplanes. If the phone rings after 1 in the morning, do not expect good news. Cuckoo clocks, no matter when they chime, are almost always ominous. When Orson Welles says what time it is, it lends the hour an epic sound. At 2 a.m., everyone's lonely. A few clips are anticipated and people applaud when they arrive. Christopher Walken in Pulp Fiction with Butch's father's watch up his ass. Big Ben exploding. These are almost meta, because their clocks were already notorious. Embedded in Marclay's The Clock, all kinds of run-of-the-mill cinematic moments become profound or comic or both. A comment as innocuous as, "I just don't have the time," reduces the audience to giggles. Very unlikely people become philosophers. Owen Wilson speaking to himself, "You're about to die. You're on the minute hand of a clock." Marissa Tomei in A Rowboat, "Time is a relative thing, an emotional thing." Other tendencies are more obscure and may be your own solitary delusion. Watching the clock is a trance-like experience, almost hallucinogenic. You're liable to see things that aren't there. For instance, isn't it the case that the charm of certain actors is so overwhelming that they seem to step out of time of the concept, to operate outside of it? For example, when Paul Newman lifts his foot onto the bed and ties his shoe and smiles, you find you are no longer waiting for the next clock. You settle in to watch Paul Newman. And when the inevitable cut comes, a sigh passes through the museum auditorium. Is that what people mean when they speak of star quality? The ability to exist outside of time? This side effect happened rarely, and it didn't seem to connect to relative fame. No one sighed when Tom Cruise came and went. Repetitions occur and appear to be meaningful. If we see a lot of James Bond and Columbo, it's because time, stage time that is their mutual milieu. Fake clocks drive their narrative worlds. Countdowns and alibis, too much German, crime scenes. This may also account for the frequency of Denzel Washington or Bruce Willis. The clock makes you realize how finely attuned you are to the rhythms of commercial film. Each foreign clip is spotted at once, long before the actor opens his mouth. And it's not the film's stock or even the clothes that give the game away. It's the variant manipulation of time, primarily its slowness. Although, of course, this slowness is only the pace of real time. In commercial film, that is, American film, decades pass in a minute, or a day lasts 2.5 hours. We flash back, we flash forward. There's always a certain pep. A plane ride is a check-in, a cocktail, and customs. Principles dear to Denzel, tension, climax, resolution, are eminent in all the American clips, while their absence is obvious to the merest snatch of French art house. An interpretation of the common enough phrase, "I don't like foreign films," might be, "I don't want to sit in a cinema and feel time pass." Most wonderful is listening to people on their way out. How did he do that, though? You can't Google for clocks. How did he do it then? Did he have hundreds of people or what? In fact, he had actually, I think, 20 people working on this, but that's beside the point. The awe is palpable, and thrilling because it has become so unusual. I am aware of two feelings, one permitted and one forbidden. The first is boredom. Usually the artist's subject is boredom, the boredom of 21st century life, etc., and my reaction is meant to be one of boredom, or at the most, outraged boredom. The second is the wonder at craft. I am not meant to have this feeling. Asking how something was made, or having any concern at all with its physical making, or being concerned with how hard the thing might have been to make. Asking any of these questions will mark me out as a simpleton, or an insufficient lover of art. The question is childish, reactionary, and nostalgic. But the clock is not reactionary and manages to reintroduce these questions without being nostalgic or childish. Marclay has made, in essence, a sort of pre-internet homemade web engine that collates and cross-references in an extraordinary manner different kinds of information. Scenes that have clocks, scenes with clocks in classrooms, with clocks in bars, Johnny Depp films with clocks, Sandra Bullock films with clocks, children with clocks, clocks on planes, and so on and so on and so on. You're never bored. You're never bored. You don't have time to be.